Hello, writers. Come write with me. My name is Michaela Greenwood. I create worlds for mind adventures. Welcome to my channel, Write with Michaela. Don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the bell so you can go on this journey with me. If this is your first time joining me, then I'm excited to have you on my channel. If you've been with me from the beginning or somewhere along the journey, thank you for returning. I'm glad you are returning. Today is story time, or the day of our chapter exchange. If you're writing with me and you wish to exchange chapters, then send your chapter with written permission to writewithmichaela@gmail.com. I will post the email address at the end of the video and in the description below. I'm looking forward to reading your chapters. All chapters or writing prompts read on the channel, whether they are mine or another writer's work, are copyright protected material, and no one may use any part in writing their own stories. This story is PG-13, so if you're under 13 years of age, you need parental guidance. This story is in its rough draft stage, just as the last stories we've heard. The title of this story is Elloni's Pride. Excuse me. And today we are reading Chapter 2 out of Book 2. If you would like to read along, then send to the email I stated earlier and request a PDF of the chapter. Make sure you are specific. Now, let's start Elloni's Pride, Book 2, Regrouping, Chapter 2, Nighttime Rituals. Kosher stretched out in the grass and put his hands behind his head. The moon was overhead, although the sun's rays were not totally gone yet, and the moon was less than half full, but not quite down to half. It was less than full, sorry. The moon was less than full, but not quite down to half. After he finished communicating with Trenton, Kosher had glanced around the camp before he had lain down and stretched out. His ma and Thilda were passing out the few berries they had left to the little ones. Everyone had tried the mushrooms, but the little ones had made faces, and Lithia and Matram had spit them out after a few seconds. One of the pieces of bark they had just broke in two, with a crack going down the middle, and Hushman was standing and staring at it when Kosher lay down. Kosher felt Hushman would take the first watch, and he would take the second, so he was going to get some sleep. Then he heard Kempton say, "How about this rock? Will it work?" So Kosher sat up and looked over. "Maybe," said Hushman. "We need to clear a little grass first." Hushman sighed. "I wanted to cook the mushrooms. The young ones might like them better cooked, but we have no pots." Kosher stood and walked over. "You told us there was a pond in this meadow. Maybe the mud is the right kind to make a bowl or something." "Maybe," replied Hushman. He glanced over at Kosher. "I thought you were going to sleep now so you could post-watch later." "I can post-watch too," said Kempton. "Me too," said Corton. Hushman sighed to himself and thought of how they would need the boys to grow up really fast. "Well, okay. One of you can post-watch with me, and the other one needs to sleep now. If we find a way to cook some mushrooms, we will rouse you. It's good that you two volunteered, because now that we're on the meadow, we will need more eyes open." Kosher motioned towards his sister and said, "Kala can take a turn too. She gets up early." Hushman looked over at Kala. "The pull on her is strong, so she needs to learn to sleep with one eye open before she leaves us to find her dragon." Kala glanced over to the males, then she turned back to knitting the hat she was working on. She had dropped 2 stitches and was working at getting them back on her needle, and she needed to get them on before she lost the rest of the sun's rays. Kosher looked at the little ones as they laid down to sleep. He motioned to Kempton. He motioned to Kempton. "Come on, we need to sleep now if we're going to post-watch later." He walked away from Hushman, and Kempton also walked away. Soon they were trying to go to sleep, and Hushman decided to keep the bark with them. They could use it to make fire, or at least part of it. Coachman had to admit that he hadn't really thought of needing wood to make fire when they left the woods, so now he was glad they had carried the large pieces of bark along. I bumped my face again, thought Hagar. We stop now? Yes, we can stop, stated Bradley as he sighed. I'm sorry I made us walk into the dark. I just know in some of the stories they say a man can walk over 200 furlongs in a day. I'm not exactly sure how long a furlong is, but it sounds far. Some stories talk about almost 1,000 rods in an hour. And I don't know how long a rod is either, but I'm sure we're not walking close to 1,000. I don't want the soldiers to catch up to us. But if the soldiers fly on dragons, started Broman as he looked up in the sky, then it doesn't matter how fast we can walk. Bradley looked at Broman. I just got an idea. Sit down and let me try it. I sat down in the small space, and Hagar curled up nearby and was almost instantly asleep. Bradley thought for a few minutes. He had given several phrases to Browser when Browser was trying to escape, and one had been to make Browser's dragons small. If they were walking in the meadow and spotted the dragons overhead, then they could cast the charm on themselves, and the soldiers would not see them. Then Bradley pushed his eyebrows together and thought, the soldiers couldn't see them when they were invisible. Bradley looked at Broman. You have good ideas. So tell me, would it be better to be invisible or small? Like really small? Bradley motioned with his hand to show the size equal to the height of his thumb. Invisible, said Broman instantly. Then he said, wait. On the other hand, asked Coulter. Broman sighed and said, I know I've explained this. Then he looked at his dragon and remembered his dragon's comment of thinking 4 ways. Sorry, my pa used to get upset when he had to explain things more than once. I explained this to my dragon. On the other hand is an expression, stated Bradley. We don't want to do as the soldiers wish us to do, so we think one way and they think another. If we said on the other side, it might make more sense. Ah, said Broman as he tapped his forehead with his hand. Our hands are on either side of our body. I understand my paw now. Coulter still looked confused. You have to think of different possibilities, stated Broman. It helps you anticipate your enemy's thoughts, put in Bradley. Yeah, agreed Broman. When we were invisible, I still found Coulter. I reached out and grabbed his hand, and I could see the bushes that Hagar passed. So it might be better to be small. Broman twisted his mouth sideways. Let me think. Deer can run fast. I mean, when I came upon them, they quickly ran away. But a squirrel just climbs a tree and hides, so... Broman thought some more. Okay, what's those little things that crawl on the ground and bite you? Then he pointed. There's a pile that says they're there. Bradley glanced over to where Broman pointed. An ant? Yeah, that's the word. And we spell that next. Anyway, this whole area here is the ants' area. But if a hunter came, or I guess a bird, they wouldn't run away. So I don't know if small is better. Can I cast a charm on you? Asked Bradley. Broman shrugged. Sure, but don't forget to spell ant. Bradley cast the charm, but he didn't remember all the numbers for percent, so he just used 1%. And then he couldn't see Broman. Coulter crawled to Broman's spot and he waved his arm over the top. He's not here. I don't know the word. Tell me one of your funny words. Bradley thought a minute. Disappeared, vanished. Coulter sat on his heels and tried to say the new word. Then he decided on Disappeared. Close enough, stated Bradley. But he should be there. He's just small, like maybe the size of your pinky finger. Pinky finger? Asked Coulter. Bradley showed him what he meant, and Coulter leaned down to look. They received, "Don't squash me! I'm right here! I've been yelling at you!" Coulter picked him up by his shirt and laughed. "He's really small! Can you do that to me?" Bradley held out his hand and let Coulter place Broman on his hand. Then Bradley held his hand close to the ground. Once Broman walked off, he released the charm he had cast on him. "Smaller is not better," exclaimed Broman. "I was running and running to get out of Coulter's way. He almost crawled on me. I was yelling for him to stop, but he wasn't listening or not hearing me or something." "Okay, calm down," stated Bradley. "I remember now, that was 1%, and that was for the dragon. But you were super small. You were like 1/4 of my pinky. Let me try again with 10%. "No," said Broman. "I almost died." He motioned. "From him." He looked back to where he'd been. "And I ran my hardest and probably didn't run an inch. That's a measurement, right? Like a furlong on a rod?" "Yes, it's a measurement," stated Bradley. "And you can estimate that with your hand once you're grown. It's close to the distance between your first and second knuckles, your first finger." "What's a knuckle?" asked Coulter. Bradley showed him. "Well, maybe I ran a knuckle or two of his hands," stated Broman as he motioned. Bradley decided to cast the charm again, so he didn't say anything. "Hey, I said no! Don't move!" Bradley lowered his hand and let Broman climb on. He still had to help him a bit. "Well, you're much easier to see and find this way." Coulter came closer and stared at Broman. "I think I can't run fast, so this might be better than no see." Bradley smiled and let Broman get back on the ground. Then he released the charm. Broman felt himself to make sure he was all there. "Okay, Hagar said he would think one way for each hand." "He doesn't have hands," said Coulter. "He's a baby and doesn't know body parts yet," stated Broman. "Anyway, why small? Why not big?" He motioned to Bradley and then to Coulter. "You run faster than him because you're bigger than him." "I do know the word for 2 and for 100. We don't want you taller than the trees, so let's try 200%. "Why try on me?" asked Broman. He motioned. "Try on him." Bradley cast the charm on both. Coulter was about Bradley's height, but a little taller, and Broman was taller than what Bradley remembered for his paw. But he wasn't taller than the trees. Broman walked around in a circle in the camp. "I'm not sure this is better," boomed Broman's voice. Bradley released the charm. "I see what you mean. But if we were on a meadow, we could use it. Then we could shrink if we saw dragons and hope they don't see us and don't land on us. Maybe it's not the best plan, but it's the plan for now. Let me teach you the words I know, since we can't see to write. But spell ant for me, and 2 more words," stated Broman. So Bradley spelled ant and 2 more words for them, and then he taught them the words to the small charm. Although now he thought he should think of it as the size charm. And he taught the numbers he knew, which were only 1, 2, 3, 10, and 100. When he told them Tiv for 3, he paused and asked himself how he knew that. And then he went through the charms he knew in his mind and realized that the size charm he gave Brosser had been for 3 hours. He wasn't sure how he knew Tiv was 3, because Soflin didn't tell him the meaning of each word. But he knew it with confidence. Before Coulter went to sleep, he practiced the words many times, and then he said the charm for 10% and crawled under a bush and a leaf to sleep. Broman motioned and said quietly, "What's going to happen when 3 hours pass?" Bradley shrugged. "I guess he grows back to his normal size." "And scares himself to death and wakes us in the process," stated Broman. Bradley shrugged again. He will learn not to be scared of so many things. I hope, anyway. Are you staying awake first? Asked Broman. Bradley glanced at Hagar, who was sound asleep. Yes, I don't have much light, but it might be enough to finish the shoes. I finished cutting, and I have a threaded needle. My dad must have thought of that. Someone just put the needle in the corner of the leather. When I saw it, I was like, oh my goodness, how would I make shoes without a needle? Which reminds me, I need to think to him, or with him. Okay, well, if Hagar isn't awake when you want to sleep, then wake me. If Hagar is awake, you might instruct him to wake me. Bradley nodded, and Broman laid down to sleep. Pa, I'm posting watch again, thought Bradley. I'm glad you included a needle with Coulter's bundle. Yeah, when we left, we didn't have anything but what was on us. Thankfully, the women always have a needle in their apron. I wanted to let you know something. I tried to let you know before, but your mind was on B and D or something. And I guess the reason you knew already last time I thought this is because you're a bringer. We have 2 linkers with us. Kosher and Kala, asked Bradley. Oh, wow. How did I know that? Wait, I'm seeing pictures. There were more in the village. Trenton and Aldemnia. Oh my goodness, it's good they got out. Even though Hector didn't want to leave. Who all was in Trenton's group that you needed charms for? I'm seeing Malik, Morton, and Marley, and, oh, what's her name? The Tartan's girl. What's her name? The one my age, not Sarley, the little 4-year-old. Were they in Trenton's group? And you thought this to me before. I don't remember you thinking this. Hushman felt his chest get tight. He calmed himself with the fact that his son, Bradley, was on their side, and he briefly thought he had spent a lot of time agonizing over telling Bradley, or not the first time, or bringing it up again this time. And he had finally concluded that Bradley might read the thoughts anyway, as he had read Kala's a few times, and resaw the scene of the dogs devouring her paw. He had concluded to just be open with Bradley, and now Bradley knew who without him thinking the names. He shook his head to himself. Kala's and Kosher's name were in his head, but that wasn't it. Bradley knew names in Trenton's group, which he didn't know himself. He thought, I don't think I have a list of children in Trenton's group. Kosher might have one. You wanted me to check on the villagers, but I felt too distracted from watching the linkers with me. Soflin advised that the universe would provide, and I said I should just let you handle it, especially since it was in your mind to do. But we need to make sure the linkers are out. Kosher just laid down to sleep, thought Hirschman. He's posting watch after me, and we're on the plains. Do you know the size charm? I'll teach you after we learn the 6. Learn if the 6 I named are in Trenton's group, thought Bradley. Hirschman thought to Kosher that he was sorry to disturb his sleep, but he wanted a list of the children in Trenton's group. He thought specifically the 6 names. Kosher had thought he wasn't asleep yet, so he connected to Trenton and asked if he was awake. Trenton confirmed that he was awake and posting watch. Then he thought a list of the children in his group. To keep things even, Kosher thought the list of people in his group, but he didn't know Bradley wanted to know, so he didn't mention that. Then Hirschman thought the list to Bradley, after Kosher thought it to him. I'm so glad they're out, thought Bradley. I want everyone out, but especially the linkers. Then Bradley thought the size charm to Hirschman. Hirschman in turn thought it to his son Corton to see if he was still awake. Hirschman in turn thought to his son Corton to see if he was still awake, and he was, so he thought the charm to him. When they changed watch, Hirschman would think the charm to Kosher, and Corton would think it to Kempton, and those would pass it to their group, and perhaps Kosher could think it to Trenton. Okay, writers, that is the end of chapter 2. If something happens to us today, I would not have a needle in the corner of my apron. Probably wouldn't have an apron. And the last time we traveled, I didn't even bring a sewing kit. You know, in case a button pops off. You know, sometimes you throw a little sewing kit in your suitcase. And you never need it. Then you don't bring it. Then you need it. And you have to go to Walmart and buy a sewing kit or buy a safety pin or something. Pin where the button should be instead of putting the button back on. So, you know, these are things, these are little details that you need to think about in your setting. In this setting that I have in this story, the people can spin cotton and they knit things and they make their own clothes. I haven't put all the details in, like loom. But certainly my readers and viewers can imagine there had been a communal loom, just like the communal shed. On another edit, I can add that detail. But if it doesn't move my story along, then I'll probably just leave it out. The needle and the leather and the knitting are there to remind my readers that these people left everything, and to remind my readers of the setting that I have. So it keeps them within the setting and within the story, and these people left everything. I mean, just left everything. That's kind of hard to do. Leave a comment on if you have ever sewn anything. Leave a comment on if you've ever used a loom. I mean, they have smaller looms now that you can just weave like a pot holder or something or whatever. But back in the day, they had big looms. Leave a comment if you've knitted something or crocheted something. Leave a comment on if you grow a garden. Now, my husband and I often try to grow a garden. And we usually get beautiful plants. Lots of leaves, lots of foliage, very beautiful, very tall plants. But not necessarily a lot of tomatoes or lettuce or carrots. Then we can go to the store. We don't have it. We try. We don't have it. We have beautiful plants. No tomatoes. We might get 1 tomato or 2 tomatoes, but not like what we would buy at the store. So we're able to go to the store. Because that's the timeline that we live in right here. So what would happen if there was no food at the store? What would we do? Some of those leaves on those, like the tomato plants, I don't think you can eat the leaves. You can eat the fruit, but not the leaves. So I don't think we would have much there for ourselves to survive if we couldn't go to the store. Leave a comment on if you've ever hunted or fished. I've done those things. So I know how patient and quiet you have to be to catch fish. I know how still you have to sit in the woods when you hunt and not even swat the mosquito on yourself. I often advise you to experience life to help you with your writings. And today I will say that you need to add some details. Not an enormous amount of details to bog down your story, but to put your readers in your time period. Bradley didn't think about needing a needle, but because his ma and his sister use those more often than he doesn't think about needing it. But he is exposed to it in his life. And he is exposed enough to know what it is and what it is for and how to use it. He knows how to use it. He knows that it's threaded. He knows how to use it. He knows what it's for. He doesn't often do that because his ma and his sister do that. And still he knows. You know, if we handed a needle to some of the kids today, would they know what it was? You know, I'll be like, what is this? Shall I poke you with it? You know, and just because maybe they figure out that you put the string on it or the thread on it, doesn't mean that they would put a knot in the end. And then they would put it through the material and just pull it. Like, oh no. They might figure it out, you know. The first time they might just pull it through. Oh, I mean, I've done it before myself. I know that you need a knot, but I pulled it through and like, oh, I forgot the knot. Let me put the knot in there and then try again, you know. And then I try to hide the knot, you know, put the needle in a certain way so that the knot doesn't show on the outside and stuff like that. So it just, depending on your setting, you need to put some of these details in, and it's helpful if you've experienced some of this. That's not to say that you need to see every stitch that Bradley does in the story, or you need to see how jagged he was able to cut the leather because he didn't really have scissors, he had a knife, you know, all those kinds of things. He didn't have one of those stamps, or, you know, I don't know what they did in the olden days so much, but they could have had a metal just to, like a stamp, but it would just press in the area to where you'd have the outline to come out. I'm not sure when they had that. I would probably have to look that up. But anyway, he's cut the leather. I don't have to give you specific details, so I don't have to specifically look that up and know that. He's cut the leather. He's sewing the leather. So those are details. And it adds to the story. In my opinion, it adds to the story. Because you can see kind of the innocence of, you know, Broman and Coulter. They're so innocent. They've been living in the cellar. Broman knows more. And his father came and spoke to him more and talked to him about some of the stuff outside. So Broman knows a little more than, obviously, Coulter doesn't know very much. But still, Bradley is like, he knows that his pa knows a lot more than he does. So this is the setting. Parents pass on the teachings down to their kid and everything. And I guess just add the details and experience life. That's my advice to you. Get out there, experience life, add the details. Don't bog down the story, but add some details to keep people in your setting. Join me Tuesday for us to get a little jargon, or for us to add to your story with a setting. Join me Friday for Elloni's Pride, Book 2, Regrouping, Chapter 3, Night Walking. Visit my website, bymckella.com, and read some character bios. If you read some, then leave a comment on which ones you've read. Don't forget to hit the like and the subscribe and the bell so we can continue to write together. And other people will have a higher chance of finding this video in this channel, since your likes will push the video out to a greater audience. Thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate your participation. If you know someone who would like this video, then please share it with them. This is Mckella with Write with Mckella. Bye for now.